We asked, while Britain is at war in Islamic lands, can British Muslims be loyal to both their homeland and their faith? For 20 years, I've reported on jihadist violence from around the world. Now Britain is a primary target. This film will ask why. MI5 says it's monitoring nearly 2,000 British Muslims from 200 separate cells who are actively promoting violence. In order to find out why Britain is under such threat, I wanted to hear from people who are usually not asked, the jihadists and their sympathizers. But my first stop on this journey to discover why was with a key government advisor who illustrated the scale of the problem.
And what I'm going to do is just draw you a little bell curve here.
Harris Rafiq showed me a chart that he'd recently presented to officers at New Scotland Yard.
And if we look, if we imagine this is the Muslim population and their attitude towards extremism. Here is where somebody decides that he or she is about to go operational and blow themselves up. There are some interesting statistics that come out. And the first one is that a percentage of people actually agree and support proactively the people that are deciding to blow themselves up.
And what is that roughly then? What are we talking about?
It varies. It can be 7%, it can be 5%, it can be 9%. Next, we can have a percentage of people that might actually sympathise. And these people probably at this stage, whilst they're in here, won't actually go out and actively go operational and won't actually decide to blow themselves up, but can actually sympathise with the people that are actually blowing themselves up. Again, this could be in double digits. And then we have a percentage of the population, the Muslim population, that actually empathises with the people that are blowing themselves up.
Empathises.
It can be that the time taken to go from here to there can be as short as 1.5 weeks.
We're talking here probably about 15% of the Muslim population, aren't we?
It could be 15, it could be more.
20%? Well, that's a massive number of
15, 20, yeah, I mean, it could be somebody who says, do you know what, I don't agree with the fact that these guys are blowing themselves up, but I can actually understand why. What we need to do as a society, and I said as a British society, is to try and move the graph over here so that we're actually building a real buy-in to some common shared values of democracy, common shared values that we all have as a British society that are not up for negotiation, like you don't go and blow yourself up.
To discover more about the attitudes on the flip chart, I went to an Islamic bookshop in Reading. At its opening ceremony, Muslims were said to share their own common values.
Being a Muslim is very, very simple. You either believe in the 5 pillars of Islam or you don't. Being a Muslim is a bit like being pregnant. You either are or you're not. And I don't think anybody's heard of anybody who's moderately pregnant.
Yvonne Ridley, the journalist who 4 years ago converted to Islam, was prepared to say openly what most Muslims only told me in private.
More and more Muslims are waking up with the realisation that it is not terrorism or extremism that is being targeted, but Islam itself. And our enemies will continue to attempt to divide us and to try and dilute Islam as they have done throughout the centuries. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
The government says the source of anti-Western violence is an ideology known as political Islam, passed on by literature, radical preachers and the internet. When the Muslim Ottoman Empire, which had included most of the Middle East, was dismantled, movements were founded to reunite Muslims and defy Western influence in the region. The bookshop owner believes political Islam can't be removed from the faith, and that the government's problem is simply that it challenges colonialism.
We've got mass resistance in Kashmir, Muslims of Chechnya, we've got genocide of people in Bosnia, and then on this section there we've got enemy combatant, which is a contemporary sort of book. So obviously living in the West, and at the moment we have this so-called war on terror, but to the Muslims it's a war on Islam, so hence we've got a book called War on Islam.
Isn't that what the government is concerned about now, and it's brought in legislation to try to limit the books that encourage this idea?
Well, they have some sort of incitement law that triggers Muslims to go and do jihad maybe, or help Muslims. But it's an idea which is within the Islamic faith, where basically we are classed as an ummah. Ummah meaning we're one body.
The Ummah is best witnessed at the Hajj, the annual pilgrimage to Mecca. As Muslims gather from around the world, national divisions submerge in the oneness of the faith.
This sort of concept of brotherhood, or ummah, is something that's unique and intrinsic to Islam, whereby it brings a person from Eastern China to Western Morocco and unites them in faith that transcends the boundaries that would normally have set them apart.
Muazzam Beg says he travelled to Bosnia and Afghanistan to offer aid to fellow Muslims. He also took up arms. After the fall of the Taliban, he was sent to Guantanamo. Is that bond, the Ummah, stronger than the bond of nationhood?
I think so, very much so. Although one can be a Pakistani or a Briton or a French person, their faith identity is what is much stronger because it's based on a belief, whereas the national identity is one that's based on geography and where you happen to be born.
The Quran repeatedly describes an Ummah of the faithful. One of the hadiths or sayings of the Prophet Muhammad compares the Muslim world to a human body.
If any part of the body is not well, then the whole body shares the sleeplessness and fever with it.
It's this bond that can cause conflict with notions of patriotism.
The Ummah is an integral part of Islam. You know, this whole concept of telling Muslims to take the Ummah out, it's like asking me to cut my heart out of my body. You can't do it because if you do it, I'll die. And the same way, if you take the Ummah out of the Muslims will die. There will be no Muslims. Ummah is an integral part of our religion.
Shahid Butt, who's from Birmingham, fought in Bosnia. Later in Yemen, he was convicted of possessing arms and explosives and sentenced to 5 years.
Defending another Muslim is a compulsory act in Islam. You have to do it. If it comes to that, you've got to do it. If somebody came to my house and kicked the door down and tried to attack my family, I'm going to go in the kitchen and get the kitchen knife and I'm going to defend them.